Hey, welcome to Architects of Innovation, brought to you by Spyglass Partners, where we dive into the minds of IT visionaries and leaders who've paved the way in the tech world. I'm your host, Joseph Jewell, and each week we're going to sit down with top executives to unravel their success stories, explore the skills that got them where they are, and discover how they're giving back to the community. We're here to celebrate their journey, share invaluable insights, and of course, bring you the latest in the ever evolving tech landscape. Get ready for a blend of inspiration, knowledge, and knowing me, a few surprises along the way. This isn't just a podcast. As the name suggests, it's a conversation with the architects of IT innovation. So, without further ado, let's jump into this episode. Jimmie, introduce yourself.
Hey, Joseph, thank you for having me on, man. I really, really appreciate it. I don't know that I can say I'm a visionary. I'm definitely relentlessly disruptive, and many people would agree on that point. But thanks so much. Yeah, happy to be here. Jimmie Lee, man, I'm sure people kind of click on the links and look at my LinkedIn. It's one of those weird interview kind of questions. Like I always skip over my background. Like, if you haven't looked it up, then let's just not talk about it. But for the sake of the podcast, I grew up as an engineer. Developer, tester, integrator, then went through the ranks through project program and product management, 9 years at Boeing, did a lot of cybersecurity forensic research, security operations at Microsoft for about 3.5 years, and then a number of different research projects, which will probably be talks for some times to come as we dive into those at a later date. At Meta, everything from hardware, software, cybersecurity, network security, hardware devices, you name it. And then for the last, 2.5, almost 3 years now, I've been on my own, performing innovation projects for different companies, building tech for different initiatives all over. And now I'm looking more towards how to scale that up and offer that to everybody else in the world.
Okay, that's awesome, man. And so tell me a little bit deeper into your background, like what career path did you take to kind of get where you are? Because it sounds like you've done a lot of different things, like you said, testing, development, all sorts of stuff. So I guess from like A to Z, how did you get where you are now?
I'll tell you, man, it's probably like Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote in the movie Hamilton. I've always been young, scrappy, and hungry. And like, seriously. So, growing up, middle class background, parents, working hard to do the best they can. Mom was a small business owner. Back in the late 80s, when I was starting to get exposed to some of the pager technologies and the numbers, and, started to talk about how they're going to be letters and numbers at some point, and then how cell phones are going to be so small they can fit in your pocket. That was back when they had big briefcases and nobody was putting them in their pockets. The big bricks. You had something hanging off of you like a fireman and a big radio. And so I just always kind of had, just a knack for technology. And then my parents scrapped whatever they had together and bought an old 386 computer. That was back when it was, DOS shell, and the GUI wasn't fully rolled out yet. Windows 3.1 hadn't been rolled out. But man, I just had to help my mom in her business, and I was always technically inclined, and she really wasn't, didn't want to be. So she sent me all these courses, and I just learned. So I was homeschooled, so I worked most of the time, played a little bit, and then got to the point where, I was speaking for the Boys and Girls Club of Pierce County one day for a fundraiser event, and somebody told me about internships. And I was like, internships, okay. What's that? And the lady looked at me like I was, should have known. I was, early on my studies at the University of Washington back at the time. And then I was like, okay, so great. Like, so what is it? She said, you need to go find one. So I cold called all the top companies in the state of Washington. I kid you not. And the man at Boeing was the only one that returned my call. Turned out he was a VP of HR for all the Boeing commercial airplanes. Go figure. And that invited me to a meeting where I met the actual president of Boeing commercial airplanes, and he had this room full of people. I didn't know, man. I'm this young kid south of Seattle, from the suburb. A lot of people would call the hood back in those days. Got my suit and tie on, my go to church little, tie clip, and, a bunch of just packages with my letters of recommendation, everything I could think of, like you're applying for a scholarship. And you know what? The meeting went well. I got an internship, and I never let it go. And I'll tell you, from a career path, my mentor, he told me, he said, listen, I said, well, what's the best career price you can give me? He said, any job they give you, take it, do it. He said, anything they ask you to do, just do it. As long as it's legal and ethical, just do it. And so it turned out that, along my career journey, there were jobs that nobody else wanted to take. I don't want to take so long on this question, but the biggest one was we were at, I think we was working for Connection by Boeing. And I was a tester back then, testing satellite communications. And it turned out that we were behind on testing schedule, and they needed somebody to try to catch the schedule up. And everybody was fighting over 9 to 5. And the guy was trying to say that there was 3 shifts. And I didn't know what 3 shifts was. I was like, what do you mean 3 shifts? He's like, the lab is open 24 hours a day. And I was like, okay, but everybody's fighting over 8 hours a day. He was like, thank you. And everybody thought I was being cynical or trying to be funny. And I'm just this kid. I didn't know any better. And so it was like, who's going to take the rest of the hours? I was like, wait a minute, those are paid hours? Like, yeah, they're paid hours. Like, give me all. And I didn't realize that, that opened up the opportunity for all the other leads and technical experts to want to give me all of their time during the working hours so that they didn't have to take time away from golfing or playing with the kids or all their hobbies. I was too young to have any hobbies. I was young, scrappy, and hungry, man. And so I just did whatever it took. And I learned.
Your hobby was working.
You know what? I learned every single system in the lab. All the software, all the hardware, and everybody was available. And I didn't realize that you continue to do that over and over in your career. And you literally earn opportunities just because you have enough grit and you're willing to put in the effort.
Yeah. I'm still a little stuck on just imagining you walking into, this executive meeting at Boeing, like with a clip-on tie and a suitcase phone, just owning the room.
Dude, it's just one of those things, bro. Like you just, I like to imagine that it was way more humbling, but it's just one of those opportunities where you gotta be able to accept the fact that you're gonna fail.
Yeah.
And once you accept that enough times, you stop hesitating, right? One of the big slogans that we had on the walls, on the posters at Meta back then on Facebook, is what would you do if you weren't afraid? And over the years, I started to champion with my teams, like how fast could we accomplish things if we didn't hesitate? I tell everybody that I hire, you're going to make 5 mistakes. I just ask that you make them quickly. But 5 major mistakes that anybody should be fired for, you're going to make them. So just make them quickly and just get through it.
Karen says, back in the day when you were rewarded for come up and hard work. Yeah, I mean, that's
I still think you are.
hard work.
I just think that you got to post about it on LinkedIn now.
Yeah, you just got to make sure everyone knows that how hardworking and how much grit you have. But speaking of mistakes, you said, at Meta, they said you're going to make 5 mistakes. Can you remember, like on your career path, were there any significant mistakes that I don't want to say haunt, but still like are in the back of your mind today that you either like learned a super valuable lesson from, or like, oh, I'm never going to do that again, or I'm going to do this a different way, that kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm gonna say the easy one first, because every executive or every senior leader has made it. Is when you accidentally told somebody that it was approved for someone to sign a contract that was millions of dollars, and there's actually a clause in there that we didn't like, and you had to roll that back. There's always that one. There was another one at I said Boeing when I was in my engineer days, and my management. I'll have to say my management throughout my entire career, I've been very, very fortunate. I've had some that I've disagreed with many, many times, but I've had people who weren't afraid to let you fail and cover you. So this one, I was working with a senior project manager, principal project manager, and I was product manager at the time. So she ran the team day by day. I was responsible for the output and P&L and, customer adoption and all of that. And so she had told me that this flag was set to like true in the code because she had worked on another piece of product, and we're getting ready to deliver an airplane to a major 3-letter, Asian carrier out of Asia Pacific. And I said, okay, well, you sure it's true? She's like, yeah, I'm sure it's true. I said, you're absolutely sure it's true? Yes, I'm sure it's true. And I trusted but didn't verify. And so we get through the entire delivery process, and it's time to deliver an aircraft. I had no idea that Boeing could be fined sometimes millions of dollars a day on a delayed aircraft. And so turns out that it's massive. I don't know if it's really $1 million a day. I kind of like to feel like it's $1 million a day, but it's massive. It's millions of dollars in a week, that's for sure. And so I said, okay, well, sure. We went with it, and turns out it didn't work. It didn't work in code, and we didn't know how to fix it. And it got so bad that everybody stressed out that I had to step out of being a product manager and go back in the lab and work through the nights to try to figure it out. And we're on that last day. And finally, my boss was right there with me, and I figured it out, because I was an engineer. So that's what happens when, like you said before, the come up, the hard work. You put the work in, and then you actually get promoted into the roles because you did the hard work, not because you're a master of LinkedIn. So it turns out that, when the stuff hit the fan, it went up to the senior execs, and, the senior execs was, talking to my manager, and, she was saying, going to own up on it. And the first question he asked was, how's Jimmie doing? I was like, no, he didn't. She's like, yes, he did. And I was like, I'm fired, right? She's like, no. She said, I asked him if I should, and he said, no. And I was like, okay, well, she said, well, why? I said, well, why not? He says, well, I know for a fact that guy's never going to make that mistake again. And I'd rather have a person that I know is never going to make that mistake in the role than a person who's not. And so from then on, I learned trust but verify. It's not something where it needs to become personal or an attack. It's how you verify is important, but verification is a sign of trust, not weakness.
Yeah. We got a comment that says, love the failure acceptance. So real. I mean, to think that someone, we're all humans, right? We're not infallible. We're going to make mistakes, and no matter what job we're doing, that kind of thing. So just being able to learn from those mistakes is the biggest thing. Is kind of what I'm hearing from you, right?
It's the journey that actually prepares you for the next big leap you're going to take. And I honestly believe that that a lot of things are far more interconnected than we like to admit. And there are people out there that you're going to see again. The world is way smaller than you really think it is, specifically when you start to get into the executive ranks and start pushing on innovation and projects. You're going to see those same people again. So you can't be out there like road raging, expect like, oh, I'm never going to see that driver again. I'm on vacation. Like, we're never going to cross paths again, so let me lay on the horn. Like, no, in this kind of world, like, you're going to probably see that person again, and you never know which position they're going to be in, or you also don't know what people are dealing with. And I think that's the biggest thing about, I think, as managers and leaders, over the years, once you've done it long enough, you realize that a person's behavior in a moment shouldn't define them per se. Of course, depending on the severity of what it is, but I'm saying in the workplace, you're in a meeting, and it's not just going like the tones off, the vibes off, right? Well, there might be something completely different going on with that person, and you got to be able to understand and have an acceptance of, okay, that's their moment, but let me continue to think bigger than that, what the company needs, try them again the next day. And you have to be patient with people, because empowerment, I strongly believe that the products and services that we build are going to be around maybe 10, 15 years or so. At the rate of innovation, at the rate that technology is moving, there's nothing that I make today that's probably going to be the biggest thing in the world when my son graduates college. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, and so that is definitely true.
What's the highest value that I can apply my energy and time to? That is because those relationships and those people that are empowered, that are given opportunities through mentoring, through coaching, through providing them jobs, they're likely to go and do that 3 or 4 times over. So if you want to start a movement of hope, a movement of empowerment, yes, I love tech. I love building things and disrupting things. But my greatest asset is how I can get in, empower people, and help their careers grow.
That's awesome. And kind of to that point, got a comment from Nathan that says, I want to prepare you so well you don't fail, build an environment where you aren't scared to fail, and help you grow if you fail. That's pretty awesome.
That's very awesome.
So, I mean, that being said, because we've talked about, a lot about kind of like mistakes in the workplace, that kind of stuff. You've shared one of your mistakes. So I guess, what is your view on like mistakes and career development? Like, do you think mistakes are necessary for career development, or do you think someone can kind of go through and, kind of play it safe and, not necessarily be innovative, but kind of get through a career without making any mistakes?
Yeah. So, I don't have my list in front of me, but I always say that, mistakes is just a fact of life, right? You're driving one day, you forget your badge. right? When we had physical badges, like there's a whole generation that's going to have only mobile credentials, which is crazy. Or you forget your keys or something, right? It's just a fact, right? But I always believe that mistakes are generally made, should be made when the risk has already been defined. And I think the expectation of spotting risks early grows as you grow into your career. Once you start rounding around that senior, going more towards principal or director or chief or distinguished kind of titles, the amount of mistakes that you make should be very far and few and in between. And those that are made, you should have a little bit more foresight ahead of time. And so I believe that risks should be communicated, they should be calculated, right? And they should ideally be measured. So you understand, you're doing enough work looking for those risks. And my PMs and product managers and everyone, my latest VP of product, he agreed with me. But for the most part, I always say like every project has risks. Anybody that comes back to me and says there's no risk in the projects, I say go look again. If they come back the third time, I'm sending them a training. If they come back a fourth time without them, then they're not the right fit. Right? There's always risk in every project, and you don't know if they're going to be realized or not. Now, the mistakes that you make are more than likely to be these micro decisions. And those, as long as you own in on them. So I don't necessarily say that a mistake is a requirement for a career, but it's just going to be a fact that it's going to happen along the way. And like the previous commenters were saying, own it. The number one thing that we struggle with the most, and a lot of people might agree or disagree, in leadership and management today, is this concept of accountability. And people just take accountability for it. And in most cases, the way that I manage, if you take accountability, it's almost water under the bridge almost immediately. Like you owned it. You said it was you. Like, okay, great. Now that point is completely off the table now. What are we going to do to fix it? Everyone, right? Because everybody's going to have that time when you're going to have to own up and be accountable for something.
Yeah. And we got a comment from Luis that says playing it safe will never lead to growth. I mean, like you said, there's calculated risk in everything, right? So if you're always playing it safe, you're not going to gain anything.
Well, but there's a caveat to that, though, right? So yes, I completely agree to that. But like, if you're in the medical field or aerospace or automotive, right, and maybe you work in some warehouses and some things like there might be some things that you can't just let the robots go off and just do on their own, or drones just go and do if you're in the defense industry. Like, I definitely believe that there are some spaces where you don't have to play it safe, but I think in other spaces, that is kind of like the name of the game. There's regulations, there's a lot of oversight, there's some governance things there, but in general, for career growth, yes, you're going to have to take a risk at some point.
Yeah, we got growth is where learning takes place, and that's for sure 100%. It's kind of like mirroring what we're saying. And then Louise, shout out to the birds in the chat. Yeah, thank you. She says hi.
I can't tell if the birds are agreeing with me or disagreeing.
Yeah, she's saying preach. She's loving it. And so I know we talk a lot about mistakes, but then you're talking about like how you're a disruptor and stuff like that too. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing today, because I know you've launched a startup, right? A few years ago. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure thing. So, I was working at Meta, and I realized as I was kind of working on a website today, and I didn't realize how much impact you can have at a Fortune 100, Fortune 50 company. Like, you sometimes get in the monotony of the day, but don't really realize how many resources you have at your disposal and how fast you can make change. So it's nothing compared to, like they say at the White House, one day is like a year for other people or even more, right? But in some of these positions that I was fortunate enough to be in, you just get so much visibility and just so much access to some of the top companies. There's almost no company in the world I couldn't call and get a meeting with. It's crazy. People say that, they boast about it, but no, it's legitimately real. I wanted to know something about 5G at some point. I think it was Ericsson or somebody. And I was just like, I need to understand this. So ping my network, and I'm talking to the chief architect of the hardware side of 5G and radio signals, and the person that's helping the government set up different regulatory Like it's crazy. Like you can get access. And so when I was at Meta, I was doing a tremendous amount of R&D and innovation. As I talked about, a lot of people don't realize that big companies innovate through a lot of smaller companies and startups. And so that's where that whole acquisitions and exit conversation comes in. And so with that access, man, we're going, we are hiring 75 to 100 startups a year, easy. And so with those, I'd have about, 10 to 15 major projects, had 3 senior directors reporting to me that basically had the cascade out of all the projects. But there are about 10 to 20 that we'd have to deliver on. And so out of those 10 to 20, I had about 5 that could not fail, like legitimately couldn't fail. We're spending so much money on R&D and innovation, they just could not fail. And so for those, I'm generally coaching and mentoring these founders, in the evenings. Back then it was the Bay Area, Menlo Park, San Jose, Fremont. So eating lots of In-N-Outs and burgers, and just kind of helping the founders kind of process and think through, product market fit, trying to figure out pricing strategies, different revenue streams, because they have to be successful a year, 2, 3, 4 years from now in order for us to say, okay, our investment makes sense. And so one of the founders was an investment banker, and he was saying, Jimmie, hey, listen, man, have you thought about like advising? And I was like, what is that? He's like, I can't do a consultant thing, man. I just don't want to just charge people. And I'm not trying to bash consultants, but it's like I don't have the mindset to just charge people when I know they're going to waste their money. I need to do something where it's actually building something. And so he said, you could do well on that. And so when I was at Meta, a friend of mine asked me to be a CTO at a nonprofit. And about 6 founders said, okay, we'll try it out. And so as I go in, for some of them, it was more about just different advice, how to scale, how to get another Fortune 50 company, how to go to market strategies, their sales strategies, their pricing strategies, different product roadmaps, product innovation initiatives. And then it kind of grew over the years of actually helping companies build tech. And so recently, I think X Factor is a great example of going into a company that doesn't have any code written at all. Some of these companies don't even have GitHub at all. Like there's nothing. They may have some Figma drawings, sometimes they don't have anything. And I'll go in, build a team, staff a team from scratch. X Factor was my greatest achievement. I had to talk to Luke over at Spyglass, but I think we did was it 15 to 18 in less than 8 weeks, something like that, something crazy. One of our greatest hires was hired in less than 24 hours with a full loop and technical assessment built in. Like we were hungry, but we can move fast. And so we'll generally take a company from 0 products to marketable or sellable product within a timeline of anywhere from 2 to 4 months. And a lot of that is because I've been able to learn a lot of hard lessons. And very thankfully, I'm super grateful to waste a ton of money at Meta trying to figure out, where cloud was going. I mean, we were at the forefront before Azure had a lot of security controls built in, like, AWS, as it evolved with your ability to kind of connect your in-house, security architecture and infrastructure to their cloud infrastructure. Like, at Meta, we were looking at stuff way before a lot of things went public and went out. And a lot of people don't realize that at these Fortune 50 companies, they work together with each other before the public ever knows about it. And so I've been very, very fortunate to be involved in these conversations over the years. So now my focus is how can I help, other companies? They say 90% of the startups fail and new initiatives fail. I like to say 90% of innovation products, even in enterprises or emerging tech companies, also fail. I like to attribute a lot of that not to just product market fit or leadership or not enough money, but the ability to understand exactly how to go and scale and build innovative technologies the easy, fast way without wasting all the money and learning all the mistakes, the hard lessons. And I firmly believe that if we can, broadcast that, create more awareness and give some toolkits, some quick start guides. And there's a lot of start guides out there and there's tons of GPTs, but a lot of that is not necessarily built by people who have actually done the work for the last 20, 30 years, that have been there before it was created, as it was created, and used it and understand it intrinsically to a very detailed level. And I believe that if we can do so, I'm really fighting not just for those startups that are failing in the US, but primarily those 90% of companies that fail worldwide, whose people do not have access to the funding. They don't have access to maybe a lot of the knowledge and understanding. Yes, they have access to the internet, but the internet's not inexpensive in some countries. It's not accessible in some companies. So if they're going to get on for an hour, they have to know that that hour is going to help accelerate their growth, and they're going to spend that hour actually doing something, not trying to figure something out because they watched the video for an hour and they can't go back online for another week, right? And so there's a ways of trying to push on innovation, but my way is trying to say, hey, how can I take a lot of the tools and services and products that a lot of startups have created, but simplify that to, you know, the storefront laundromat, to the restaurant down the street, right?
Yeah.
To that middle market company that's dealing with something that's not technically driven, and actually help them implement something that's life changing.
Yeah. So.
Oh, you just went on mute. Sorry.
Sorry about that. So you mentioned your time with X Factor, how you were very proud of that. So, and kind of what you've done there. But what are you doing now? Like, and what is kind of your mission, and kind of how did you come up with that mission, kind of going forward?
Yeah, so I mean, the mission is typically focused again really on that 90% that failure rate, right? And so innovative and disruptive technology and product development, there's a finesse, and it currently takes decades to learn. So I want to transfer that to companies and skip the decades and give them immediate access to it in an affordable way. So right now, people could talk to me about, you know, helping scale out their current products that they have in their own company, help come in and help them figure out how to go and build, you know, new products and services to increase their revenue growth. Some companies, you know, especially right now with the volatile markets, are having to pivot, but they don't know where to pivot, how to pivot, you know, how to implement that pivot, how to utilize the current staffing that they have and where they need to augment. Or some people are just saying, hey, listen, I know I need a new whole platform and I just can't get to it. Can you just do something for me, deliver it to me in 4 months, teach my people how to use it, let me run out with that. And so I'm also working on building a platform that ideally will automate the whole process, but like any other product that's being built, may take a little bit of time, but more importantly, rather than, and I love GPTs and I love AI, but I'm not going to go to a GPT and try to accelerate building that platform. I actually want to build something from the ground up, an internal custom language model and AI proprietary custom technologies, and run people through that product, you know, to kind of work out the kinks. And so I'm also looking for a couple of people who might be more like a design partner to kind of help me flush out the workflows and make sure that some of the baseline thinking that I have, I know that would work, but is it well received from a customer perspective?
Yeah. So you mentioned GPTs on those, like, what are the differences between like ChatGPT, Bard, you know, Bing has its version. There's like other stuff called like Hicks.ai. Like, what are the difference between all of those tools? Like, are they basically the same thing underneath, or I guess, can you explain a little bit about like what you understand the differences are?
Yeah, you know, I'm not quite sure who the audience of the talk will be, so I won't geek out too hard. But I'll basically say that a lot of it is on the base language sets that was trained on one. So Bard, you know, Google has access to their data sets. OpenAI has been very candid about how they've accessed their sets. Others have, you know, accessed different data sets and language models, which makes them a little bit more specialized in different areas. So, for example, Bard may be a little bit more, I think it might be better at videos. OpenAI, ChatGPT is great at text. There's others that are great at going through voice, others. And so it's just basically, it's not just the algorithms that are written, but it's also the base data sets that it's trained off of. But you also have to understand that AI is technically just an evolution of automation. It's finding patterns and recognizing patterns that we technically kind of know that exists, that's been confirmed by human persons for a certain amount of sample numbers of iterations to then give us a certain amount of confidence that it's then going to be able to predict something that a human can't see. Now, in my personal opinion, AI is still not more powerful than the human brain, but most of us are not quite able yet to tap into the full power of the human brain. So it makes it a lot easier to force multiply ourselves through an algorithm that has been trained on known patterns to recognize connection between data sets by which it was trained. And so you can't just go grab a LLM from Meta or Google and then go out there and say, okay, I have my AI ready to go. Well, that's great. That's the base model. Now you need a set of data to train it on, and you need to teach it how it should train on that data so that it can then provide responses and answers to known patterns that you define that it should be able to recognize.
Okay. Someone commented, I'm interested in hearing thoughts about AI Grok. I don't know what that one is. Have you heard of that one?
I have not. I'm kind of, my teams wanted to use AI at the previous job, and I told them that they could probably use it in something like a Notion, but no Copilot code writing tools. And they're just like, why can't I use it to write code? And I was like, well, first of all, everybody knows in the industry that most people don't know how to write secure code. So if most people don't know how to write secure code, and the AI is trained on previous code that's already been written, that we already know is insufficient, then by definition, the Copilot is not teaching you how to write secure code. So yes, you might be able to utilize it a little bit, but it still needs to learn the differences between recommending a secure way of writing code than a not secure way. Now, there's going to be people on this thread that are going to tell me that it can do that too. And I'm going to say, okay, I don't disagree, but I'm pretty betting on the fact that 80% of it is insufficient, unsecure, and 20% is. And so we don't really know the balance of how it's been. The Elon Musk launching it on Twitter. Here's the thing, right? So here's the thing about AI that's been trained on, different, it kind of scares me out of my mind where they say, okay, well, it's been trained on Twitter data. All right, so what is Twitter data? And this is way oversimplifying it, but Twitter data is basically opinions that are provided by millions of people, right? And so you have these opinions provided by millions of people. Yes, there's some truth to it, but there's always some bias built into it. And so the real question that we should be asking is, how are we going to extract the bias and opinions based from hard, true facts? And that is partially why I'm so, scared about the mission of my company, right? Is at some point, businesses are going to start taking guidance from AI, and AI is like, I'm doing the best that I got with what you gave me. Junk in, junk out. And then they're going to say, okay, well, I made this decision because I went to ChatGPT and I asked it, and they gave me this answer, and I made a business decision on this answer. And we're going to find out quickly that a lot of the training data was opinion-based, full with bias, directed towards an intended outcome, and it might have fit for the moment that it was provided in. But AI doesn't know that. And so at some point, there's going to be happening with humanity on all these decisions that are being made based upon bias-driven AI, and somebody's going to have to go clean it up.
Can you imagine someone trying to own their mistakes, but then I actually got that idea from Twitter AI. It's like, sorry, that's, oh man.
Jesse so going to get pulled over on the side of the road. Sorry, officer, GPT said that the speedometer wasn't, whatever. And this is going to be like, so who's the expert? And that's the problem is that GPTs are a great force multiplier and accelerator, but it does not replace expertise. And there is the biggest missing element of AI is that intrinsic human instinct that is pattern unrecognizable right now, where you just get a prompting from a voice on the inside that tells you, based upon your previous experience for something you've never experienced before, that I shouldn't go right in this scenario where everybody's going to tell you to go right. Everything on the internet is going to tell me to go right. I need to go left. And that's the biggest differentiator between a true trusted vetted expert and a GPT.
Yeah, so there's truth to Gen X worrying about Skynet. Well, before we go down that path, I know we're a little bit over on time. I did have at least one more question to ask, and it's more about because you are kind of running your own startup. So I really want to see what do you envision your company's impact will be in the community, society, and the tech field in general?
So it's one of those things, right? I do have a number of people working with me, but my company started with me, right? A couple of people that I convinced to come alongside, right? And so I think a lot of it is, you as a person, I don't think you can hide even as a founder, as a, either you're a founder of a company with employees or solopreneur or however you are, right? I think we also have a personal attachment to make an impact on the community. One of the things that I do, I'm a president of the DSC community of Puget Sound, the Down syndrome community of Puget Sound, president of the board there. My family and I, we've launched and run different food banks and community outreach programs over the years, working with people in the community. I do a lot of mentoring and coaching. A number of my mentees will say that I'm, very consistently expecting a lot out of them, which I think is fair. But, a lot of them, people just need hope and love, right? And I think for the most part, there's a lot of disconnect. There's a lot of things that we could say divide us, but I think that there's more things that bring us together and separate us. From a company perspective, my hope is that 90% number. Listen, man, I am not over unrealistic. There's nothing that I'm going to do that's going to eradicate 90% of startups or companies failing in the world. Let's just be real. But if I can at least move that number a little bit, maybe reduce it by a percent, or I did it by 10%, I think we're doing, or just inspire other people to really start to focus on that problem. There's a lot unpacked in there. There's D&I in there. There's localization in there. There's all kind of different factors that kind of compound that problem. But honestly, my hope is, for humanity's sake, that we bring that brilliance to light. There's so much brilliance that humanity is losing because companies don't understand how to build and deliver their tech quickly enough, and they're failing. And we could have a cure for cancer, or for any of the other Alzheimer's or dementia, or all these other things that we're faced with in life. And these hard challenges, there could be answers to those, and people could have created it, but they're not able to get it known. And I think that's the problem that I really want to try to, impact for the world.
Wow. I love that, man. Any other closing remarks before we kind of end everything?
Dude, I just kind of feel like that hand right over your shoulder has been about to reach out and touch you the whole time. But it's it's so awesome. Yeah, I'm kind of do it. And
it's the Iron Man lamp.
I know. I just don't know if it's going to actually scratch your back or change your life, right?
It's just come across and just grab me mid, and just you see me fly off of the screen because it's pulling me somewhere.
Absolutely. I don't know. The parting word is hey, if there's conversations that can be had, if there's anything I can do to help anybody, please just reach out. Right? Everything doesn't have to be transactional. I grew up in a city that's south of Seattle, but it's kind of like a town where everybody helped each other out, and because of that, it just made the community a better place. And so everything I can do, just let me know.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining us on this episode of Architects of Innovation. It's our first ever episode, brought to you by Spyglass Partners. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and some inspiration from our conversation with Jimmie. But remember, Spyglass Partners is your dedicated IT staffing partner. And if you're an IT professional looking to make your next move, or a company seeking top-tier talent, you can slide in my DMs or reach out to me on LinkedIn or at my email, jjewell@spyglasspartners.com. Thanks, everybody, for coming in and listening. Thanks, Jimmie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.